Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are from, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is. This is would-be farmer from Central Florida, halfway between Jacksonville and Orlando. I want to talk about trees today. Trees are wondrous. They are amazing. I have recently been reading Peter Wolben's A Hidden Life of Trees. The Hidden Life of Trees. He's a German forester. That book has really inspired me to study more about trees and learn more about trees, everything I can. They're fascinating species. So what makes them so fascinating? What do trees do? Well, if you'd asked me when I was a kid, what do trees do? I'd have said, well, they give us a place to climb. The place to climb. They give us shade. Yeah, they give us shade. And, oh yeah, sometimes they give us fruit. We go over to Old Man Johnson's place and we steal his apples, which really irritates him, but it gives us fruit. And then later on, we learned probably when we were young students, we probably learned that photosynthesis, yeah, photosynthesis. They give us oxygen, which is kind of a human-centered thing. And we think, oh, they give us oxygen. Well, they provide oxygen to the atmosphere, and there are many species that rely on oxygen. Many species rely on oxygen. It's a key element, right? Okay. So, besides shade and giving us a place to climb, what do trees do? Well, photosynthesis, of course, just talked about that. They also cycle water. They cycle carbon, clean the air, provide animal habitat, not just for humans, but other animals. They moderate climate. They moderate the climate, prevent erosion, and preserve soil. Okay, so photosynthesis. Again, when I was a kid, when I was quite a bit younger, I understood that enough. I understood that they took sunlight and they kicked out oxygen. That was great, but I did not understand what everything that photosynthesis entails. Yes, they take carbon dioxide from the air. They take water from the soil. They kick out oxygen. Well, they also produce carbohydrates. They produce starches and sugars and cellulose. They make their own food. Okay, so they make their own food. They use that to grow. They use that to reproduce. They use that for cell structure. They use that for their leaves and the twigs and branches and the bark. And they also exude these sugars, these starches, through their roots into the soil. Now, at first, scientists thought, well, why are they kicking out these calories? Couldn't they use them? Couldn't they store them and use them for reproduction? Couldn't they store this food and use it for lean times? Couldn't they store this food and use it to battle predators, etc., etc.? Well, it turns out that there are many microorganisms in the soil that are beneficial to trees, and they use this as food. One of the most amazing revelations to me through reading and studying trees, the realization that there are these vast fungal networks underground that connect the roots of all these plants and trees together. And in these vast fungal networks, which are called mycorrhizal fungal networks, mycorrhizal, mycos, I believe, from the Greek, meaning fungi, and the rhizo part means root in Greek. So you have mycorrhizal fungi, which is fungi, root fungi systems, mycorrhizal fungi networks, connect all these trees. And some of these species of mycorrhizal fungi actually infiltrate the roots of these trees, so they become one in a way. They don't just hang out next to them and pick up food. They infiltrate the roots. They become one in with these root systems. So they extend the roots, the reach of these trees, out into the subterranean network, picking up nutrients, picking up water, extending their nutrient and water reach. Interesting. Wow, I was not aware. That's pretty intense stuff. So these trees are connected via these mycorrhizal fungal networks. They share calories, not only with their kin, but with their own species, and with their own species, but with other species as well. And when we look up to the canopy of these forests and we see trees competing for sunlight, it's clear there's some competition going on. Well, yeah, there's also a lot of cooperation going on as well. Maybe these trees realize through evolution or through something bigger than that they need other species to survive. That they need all these species. They need a balance. They need diversity. How wonderful. Scientists have realized, Dr. Suzanne Simard, British Columbia, she grew up as in a logging family, and that's what she wanted to do as a kid. She knew that's what she wanted to do, was get into forestry, so she got into forestry. And she realized, wow, I don't think we're treating the forest as well as we should be. She went back to school, got her PhD. I think it was the University of Oregon, or was it Oregon State? I don't want to get the ducks and the beavers mad at me. It was in Oregon, I believe, right? Well, she's now with the University of British Columbia. She's one of the top scientists in her field. And she did some experiments. She and her team did some experiments back in the late 80s or early 90s, I believe, where they introduced radioactive gas to trees. I think they put plastic bags over the trees, radioactive gas that could be traced, and they watched and followed to find out where these gases went. And they went not only just to their kin, they went to other species. They were talking to fir. Birch was talking to fir, and fir was talking to birch. They were sharing calories. They were sharing photosynthesis. This is interesting. So now, looking at this, talking about photosynthesis, in light of this, you think about what these trees are doing in this forest. Are these different species of trees now? Is this one organism? They're connected. They feed each other. And they talk to each other. They communicate. They don't communicate like we humans do they? Well, the dog doesn't communicate like we do. Frogs and salamanders, they don't communicate like we do. All life forms have a particular, have peculiarities and uniqueness, right? But they communicate with each other. There was an instance in Africa, and I think it was in the 90s. This might have been about, early 90s perhaps, where there was this type of African antelope that was suddenly dying. And the scientists would look at the antelope, and they couldn't find anything that was specifically wrong with it. They couldn't, at first, it looked healthy, just didn't get this. These antelopes were dying. Well, about the same time, and I forget which scientist this was, forgive me, Van Vooten. Anyway, that part is irrelevant. Sorry for you. Noticed giraffes nibbling and grazing on one acacia tree, and then they would leave and skip several others and go down a good bit further and start nibbling over time at another acacia tree further down. And I realized it was downwind. It was a good way downwind. Or they would go upwind to the next tree, or so the story goes, and start nibbling there, eating those leaves. What they found out was that these acacia trees were producing tannin to a level that was toxic and or fatal for these giraffes. So the giraffes were going further away from the tree so they could find some leaves, but yet they would go right next to the tree upwind. They found out that these trees were emitting ethylene gas. So these other trees were picking up the ethylene gas as a warning signal. So the trees would start producing tannin, save their own hide, save their own leaves. Giraffes would move on. They'd have to go to another area. So they communicated to themselves, either directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally. There's communication going on, whether it's a broadcast, whether it's back and forth, full duplex, or whether it's simplex. They're communicating, right? They're warning each other. They've also done experiments and they've researched and observed that trees will produce tannins or chemicals or certain responses based on the saliva of the predators. Certain insects have different eating patterns, different saliva, and they would produce a different response based on that. Also, trees would emit gases, warning signals that would be picked up by, say, a predator of a certain beetle. That predator would get the signal, would get the gas, get the whiff, get the scent, and go, "Hey boys, whoop, buffet on Elm Street, let's go." And man, they're flying in, they're taking care of business. So the trees are talking to birds, or talking to whatever, talking to predators that can... Okay, this is interesting. So it's like, so trees, what they're thinking, trees can't learn. I mean, we're human beings. We're the superior species on the planet. We have the brains. We build spaceships and submarines, skyscrapers. We're pretty sharp, aren't we? We're the superior species on the planet. Well, we've also wreaked havoc and we've created lots of problems. We've burned a hole through the planet. So let's just slow that roll a little bit. We define other species by ourselves may not be the right thing to do. Maybe there's more going on here than we realize. So can trees learn? Can trees learn? Along came another scientist, Dr. Monica Gagliano, an Italian scientist who is out of the University of Sydney. She and her team did some tests with a plant I'm familiar with, a plant tree called the mimosa, the sensitive tree. You touch its leaves pop, right? Boop, its leaves curl up. So these plants are relatively easy to take into a lab, so they did experiments where they would drop water on the leaves, and the leaves would close up. Drop water on the leaves would close up. After a while, drop water on the leaves wouldn't close up. Drop water, the leaves wouldn't close up. They came back weeks later, did the same thing, dropped water, the leaves wouldn't close up. So the plants, the trees, were learning. If they're learning, are they storing this information? And if they're storing this information, where are they storing the information? How are they storing the information? Don't have all the answers, but it's fascinating. It's worth research for sure. This is amazing stuff. Trees, a little more sophisticated than this guy thought. Yeah, okay. Photosynthesis. The trees. Trees are thinking, they're communicating, they have these vast fungal networks. Trees cycle water. This is a little easier for me to handle. I wasn't aware of this. I just thought the clouds came in from the ocean and dropped water, and that's what happened. Well, studying the Amazon rainforest, a lot of scientists realized, these trees are a good distance from the ocean, and this is really humid, and the trees transpire. They pull water up through their roots, up into their crown. Water vapor rises, and some pollen and other particulate matter will rise with this water vapor. And it goes up, forms clouds. You get particulate matter, raindrops come down, bring that particulate matter down, and it rains. Trees create rain through transpiration and evaporation of water. Evapotranspiration, how fun is that to say, huh? They create rain. So they cycle water. They store a ton, when I say a ton of water. If a tree weighs 2 tons, some of these huge trees, it does store a ton of water. Scientists are telling us now the trees will store about 50% of their weight in water. About 50% of their weight in water. I think humans do about 60%. Does that sound right? 2/3, 60%? That's impressive. Trees are huge water storage devices. Who knew? Well, some people knew. I'm certain the trees knew. Well, that is the best place to store our water. We need forests. Look at what these trees do. This is amazing stuff. They cycle water. We already talked about them cycling carbon. They take carbon dioxide out of the air. Produce carbohydrates for themselves and for soil organisms. They also clean the air. Our air conditioner just kicked on That's another class for another day. Speaking of filtering the air, it's not just a matter of taking carbon out of the air and creating carbohydrates and kicking oxygen out, taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. When you look at a tree and you see that the pollen gathers on the leaves, and you'll see other things that blown by the wind that are on the leaves, and then and it rains and the water comes down and it lands on the crown, and then there's what's the word when the water falls through? Water falls from the leaves down into the soil, and it carries all this stuff that was accumulating on the leaves. It carries it into the soil, so it cleans the air that way. Cycles water, cycles carbon, cleans the air. We've talked about the animal habitat. There are a lot of trees that after they have fallen over, or partially fallen over, that tree becomes not just food, but also a home for many creatures. Most of us, we're used to these better homes and gardens, Sunset Magazine ideas of where we live, and we chop all the trees and we clean all this stuff. We really should leave it. If we're being environmentally conscious, we should leave that stuff. It plays an important role. I know there's an argument where you want to keep the area around your house clean so you can see critters as they're coming in. Really, we live out in the boonies, and we're trying to be right in the middle of the forest. And there's snakes and there's stuff out there. We've seen wild turkey, we've seen feral pigs, rattlesnakes. We had alligator hanging out in back. Hey, I'm an alligator. Yeah, we're in Florida. Of course you're not. Yes, that stuff happens. But do I really want to pave 100 feet in each direction from my house? Do I want to do that? Do I want to pave? Maybe 200 feet. So there's an argument there. I get it. We want to be safe. I don't want to get eaten by some. Yeah, I get that. But I say we need to be a part of nature and not separate from. We don't need to place ourselves between the other species and God. I think that's our big problem. We're all connected, as Chief Seattle said. We didn't create life. We're one strand in the web of life, and we're all created. And we need to pay attention to that. Okay. Moderating climate. I remember the first time. I think I was in Orlando, and I went into this botanical garden area, and they had a section, and they were talking about microclimates, and I went. And I just got it. It was 90 degrees out here. It feels like it's 75 in here. And it's because it was. It was 75. There are times when I'm working out in my scrub area and I'm like, man, I got to take a break. Then I come inside and get in the AC. No, I just walk into the forest. It's 10 or 15 degrees cooler there. It is wonderful. It is beautiful. It's what trees do. Moderating the climate. Not only do they moderate the climate, they preserve and hold the soil. We're on about a 4 degree to 13 degree slope here. If we didn't have any trees here, and this is my observation, this is what I see. If we didn't have trees here, a lot of the soil we have here in sand would be in that pond. It would be in that pond. We have a pond at the base of our property, and I'm telling you, without these trees holding this soil, this vast network. If we look at a tree, what you see above, think about that all connected underneath. Think about that all connected underneath, all this network connected. It's holding the soil. It's also holding the water. We talked about that. If a tree holds 50% of its weight in water, so it's storing these huge columns of water. It's warehouse. It's given us food. It's given us habitat, given all the animals habitat, a place for kids to climb. It cleans the air. Carbon cycling, water cycling. Trees are amazing. Photosynthesis, cycling water, cycling carbon, cleaning our air, holding the soil, giving us food, and if properly managed, giving us building materials as well. Trees are amazing. I hope you've benefited from this. I had a good time sharing this information with you. Check out Peter Wolben, The Hidden Life of Trees. Get online, find out some neat stuff about Dr. Suzanne Simard. She is really good on trees. Dr. Monica Gagliano out of the University of Sydney. She's got some fantastic experiments and some good stuff out there as well. This is Would Be Farmer signing off. I hope you enjoyed this. There'll be more. Take care.